Deep in the Sahara Desert, far from the noise of the modern world, there lies a city whispered about by explorers, envied by empires, and forgotten by time. A city of gold? No. A city of knowledge. This is Timbuktu, the city of scholars, the beating heart of Africa's intellectual golden age. For centuries, the world thought Africa had no written history, that her people lived without science, philosophy, or literature. But buried in the sands of Mali lies the truth. Hundreds of thousands of manuscripts, written by African hands, centuries ago. They speak of medicine, astronomy, mathematics, law, poetry, and love. Proof that long before Europe's Renaissance, Africa was already thinking, teaching, and dreaming. Today, we uncover the breathtaking story of the ancient libraries of Timbuktu. How they rose, how they thrived, and how they survived the flames of war, colonialism, and time itself. They called it the Athens of Africa. But in truth, it was something far greater. The desert's hidden jewel. Our story begins nearly 1,000 years ago, along the banks of the great river Niger. Caravans of camels, stretching for miles, marched across golden sands, carrying salt, gold, ivory, and cloth. The Sahara was alive with trade, and every trader dreamed of reaching one place, Timbuktu. What made it special? Not its riches, but its mind. In the 12th century, Timbuktu became the beating heart of the Mali Empire, one of the richest and most advanced civilizations on Earth. The empire's rulers, like Mansa Musa, the richest man in human history, were not only wealthy, they were patrons of learning. When Mansa Musa made his legendary pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324, he returned with architects, scholars, and books. And among the cities he built up was Timbuktu, transforming it into a beacon of knowledge that would light Africa for centuries. The rise of the city of scholars. By the 14th and 15th centuries, Timbuktu had become more than a city. It was a university system, long before Oxford or Harvard took shape. At its heart stood three great learning centers: the Sankore Mosque, the Jingareba Mosque, and the Sidi Yahya Mosque. These weren't just places of prayer, they were classrooms, where scholars debated philosophy, astronomy, and law beneath the open skies. Students traveled from across West Africa, from Gao, Kano, and even Egypt, to study here. Some came on foot, others on camelback. They memorized the Quran, but they also studied mathematics, medicine, botany, and literature. It's said that at its height, Timbuktu had over 25,000 students and 180 Quranic schools, in a city whose total population may have been only 100,000. And from this culture of learning grew something extraordinary: libraries. The golden libraries of Africa. Imagine this: rooms filled with manuscripts, thousands of pages bound in leather, written in Arabic, Ajami, and local African scripts. These weren't just religious texts. They contained treatises on medicine, herbal cures, surgical techniques, and anatomy, mathematics, advanced algebra and geometry centuries before it reached Europe. Astronomy, star charts, planetary movements, lunar calendars, law and governance, how to rule justly and ethically. Philosophy and poetry, deep reflections on the human soul, love, and destiny. These manuscripts were written by African scholars like Ahmed Baba al-Timbuktu, a philosopher, jurist, and historian who authored over 40 books and once said, "The ink of a scholar is more sacred than the blood of a martyr." Some manuscripts were imported from Morocco or Andalusia, but most were homegrown, the work of African thinkers passing knowledge from father to son, teacher to student. Knowledge wasn't just power. It was a sacred inheritance. The scholars and the kings. Timbuktu's greatness was sustained not just by scholars, but by kings who valued wisdom above war. Rulers like Askia Muhammad the Great of the Songhai Empire made learning the foundation of his rule. He built schools, funded scholars, and made sure that even the poorest children could study. Under his reign, Timbuktu became the intellectual capital of West Africa. While Europe was still recovering from the Dark Ages, Africans in Timbuktu were discussing the laws of physics, the movement of the stars, and the ethics of governance. But every golden age faces its sunset. The invasion and the flames. In 1591, everything changed. The Moroccan army, armed with guns and driven by greed, invaded the Songhai Empire. Timbuktu was attacked. Libraries were burned. Scholars were chained and exiled. Among them was Ahmed Baba, Timbuktu's greatest scholar. He was captured and taken to Morocco. But even in exile, he refused to stop teaching. He wrote, "They can imprison my body, but they cannot chain my mind." Yet, even amid destruction, the people of Timbuktu refused to let their knowledge die. Families hid manuscripts in walls, buried them in clay pots, and smuggled them across the desert. Some hid their libraries for centuries, waiting for a day when the world would once again listen. The hidden guardians. For over 400 years, the manuscripts slept in silence. Generation after generation, families guarded them like sacred relics. Fathers whispered to sons, "These are our ancestors' words. Protect them with your life." Through colonial rule, droughts, and wars, these texts survived, not in government museums, but in private homes. In 2012, when militants threatened Timbuktu again, brave librarians and citizens risked their lives to rescue over 350,000 manuscripts, smuggling them by donkey, boat, and car to safety in Bamako. They didn't save just books. They saved the soul of Africa, the rediscovery and the legacy. Today, the ancient libraries of Timbuktu are being restored, digitized, and studied by scholars worldwide. The Ahmed Baba Institute, founded in Timbuktu, preserves thousands of manuscripts. Young Africans are now returning to learn Arabic, Ajami, and ancient sciences, reclaiming what was once buried. These books prove one undeniable truth. Africa was not a continent of silence, it was a continent of scholars. When the world thought Africa had no writing, Timbuktu's libraries whispered otherwise. When others wrote Africa out of history, Timbuktu's pages wrote her back in gold. The desert remembers. Today, the desert still remembers. The winds that sweep across Timbuktu carry whispers of poets, scientists, and dreamers who once changed the world. Their message is clear. Knowledge is Africa's greatest treasure, and it can never be lost. As long as these manuscripts live, Africa's light will never fade. So next time someone tells you Africa had no history, tell them about Timbuktu, the city that kept knowledge alive while the world forgot. If this story touched you, if it opened your eyes to the greatness of Africa's past, share your thoughts in the comments. And subscribe to Real African History, where we tell the stories they tried to erase. Because Africa's story is not just history, it's heritage. And it's alive again.